Hi guys, I'm back to do another video for you. This is going to be a book review, and it's going to be on The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. I absolutely loved this book. I read it in May. I went on a vacation, so I was doing a lot of relaxing and, of course, a lot of reading. I have more book reviews to come on the books I read while I was on vacation. This is number 1, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel to be up to date on when those other book reviews come and are posted. But I absolutely loved it. It was a quick read. I read the majority of this on the plane because it was a long flight. It was about maybe 7 hours. So, but I read the majority of this on the plane. I absolutely loved it. A great read, 5 out of 5 stars. She, for people who don't know, Kelly Bishop played Emily Gilmore, obviously, in the title. Played Emily Gilmore on the TV show Gilmore Girls. So Lauren Graham, who played Lorelai, was Kelly Bishop's daughter on the show, and Alexis Bledel, who played Rory Gilmore, was Lauren Graham's daughter, and she was a grandmother. And Edward Herman played Kelly Bishop's husband on the TV show. She talks a lot about, even though this book is about like 200 pages long, she fills this book with a lot of stuff in it. She talks about, obviously she talks about working on Gilmore Girls, but she also talks about, she was a Broadway actress before she kind of moved into, before she started doing TV, she was a Broadway actress. And she was in The Chorus Line and a few other shows. I cannot remember what they are off the top of my head, but it's all in the book. And she talks about, I believe she talks about her career in the 80s and 90s, and I believe the mid 70s. She's had such a career, and she talks a lot about her life and her childhood and everything like that. She literally, for 230-ish page book, she fills this book with a lot, but I loved it. It was great. But like I said, she talks about the mid 70s, her career. She was, like I said, she was also in The Chorus Line and a few other shows I can't remember. She does talk about that being a Broadway star and what it was like on Broadway at that time. She, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I apologize if this is incorrect, but I believe she was married around 3 times. She talks about that in the book. I believe she was married around 3 times. She was married for, I think, like 3 or 4 months and then got divorced. And then she got married, I believe that's correct. If not, I apologize. And then she got married again, and I think the 80s. And then she was married for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And then she got divorced, and she met her late husband, who was, his name was, I believe, his name was Lee Leonard, and he passed in he passed in 2018, and they were married from 1981 to 2018 until he died. And so, yeah, she talks about being married twice, and I believe her second marriage, like I said, I believe it was 3 or 4 years. She got divorced, and then in 1981, she met, or a year after her divorce, after she got divorced, this is for the second time, she met her late husband, Lee Leonard. They got married in 1981, and they were married until his passing in 2018. And she talks about all that. She goes into detail. Edward Herrmann, who played her husband, Richard Gilmore, on the TV show Gilmore Girls. She talks about his death in the book. She is very close with Lauren Graham and Alexis and everybody from the show. Not everybody from the show, but the three of them were very close. And the three of them were very close. And she stayed close friends with Richard Herrmann before he passed in 2014, I believe. And I believe he had brain cancer. But she talks about being married to Lee and all that stuff. And then she dives into her career in television. And the main thing she talks about is her time on Gilmore Girls. She and Edward Herrmann were... In the first season, I believe they were only slated to be in 13 episodes of the season. Maybe 14. I can't remember. She mentions it in the book. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. But I think every season, her and Edward Herrmann, unless it was a special occasion episode, as she liked to put it, they were not in every single episode. There were some episodes that they were not in that were, that she was in but he wasn't in, or he was in and she wasn't in, or she was in it for maybe 5 minutes and it was one of those types of things. But she said, like I said, she said the first season she and him were in about 13 or 14 episodes. Then she said they were not in every single episode every season. They had a set number of episodes. Lauren Graham and Alexis Bledel were in every single episode of the season. But there were some episodes that were slated for them to be in. They had 13 episodes. They were only in 13 episodes for the season. Or they were in 14 or 15 episodes for the season. They had every season when they were going to shoot the show, she got every script she got. I think it said how many episodes each person was going to be in. Lauren and Alexis were always in every single episode. And then she and Edward Herrmann always got the list of all the actors and what episodes they were going to be in. She and him always got theirs before they started filming each season, so they knew what episodes they were going to be in, so they knew what scripts they were getting. And she said it was always between 13 to 15 episodes. And sometimes she also said there were some episodes they were in together, and then there were some episodes that she was in more scenes of, and he was in not that many scenes, or there was an episode she was in that she was in, but Edward Herrmann had more scenes than her, and that type of thing. But she then talked about that it was a cute mother-daughter show, and she loved it playing Emily Gilmore, but she thought the show was going to be a one-off type of thing. She didn't think it was going to get as popular as it did. It's in syndication. It's on Netflix. It's on Hulu now. It's on, I think, Disney, Disney Plus, if I'm correct. It's just got, Hallmark just bought it. The Hallmark Channel just bought it. It's on a station called Smart TV. It's on a lot of channels. And she didn't think it was going to get to the popularity it did. She was like, she thought it was going to be popular, but she didn't think it was going to have the fan base it ended up having after the first season. So she was a little shocked by that. And then she talked about that after it ended, she was going to take a bit of a break. After Gilmore Girls ended, after 7 seasons, she was going to take a break from acting for maybe a year or two, just to spend more time with her husband, because she was always in Los Angeles shooting the TV show when she needed to, and he was in New Jersey. That's where they lived at the time, and I believe she still lives in New Jersey, but I don't know where. Yeah, she lives in New Jersey. So she still lives and resides in New Jersey. I don't know where though. But she did talk about that after the show was over, because she was in Los Angeles a lot of the time shooting Gilmore Girls, and she had to stay there depending on how many episodes she had to shoot. I think he was on like Fox or one of those types of stations as a newscaster. And I believe he was a newscaster. So their paths crossed, but not as much as she would like. So like if there were sometimes she would be home, he would be at work. And when she was home, she was in Los Angeles shooting. So they never really saw each other all that much. So she went into it in the book that she wanted to take some time off, at least for a year or two, to spend more time with her husband, because they didn't really see a lot of each other, because their work schedules didn't always line up, because she was in another state and he was in New Jersey working. She said, which worked out fine, but she would have liked to spend more time with him. And then there was a TV show that was only on for a year called Bunheads. And it was maybe a year or two. Gilmore Girls, I believe, ended in 2007 or 8. And Bunheads started in, I believe, 2010 or 2011. And she was home and she wanted to stay home for a bit, and then Amy Sherman Palladino, who created Gilmore Girls, had this idea for a new TV show with Sutton Foster called Bunheads. She, because how much Gilmore Girls took and it was so time consuming, she didn't really want to be away from her husband all that often to go shoot in like Los Angeles or in another place. So she was hesitant at first, but she then knew that she wanted to do this for Amy, and Bunheads eventually got canceled after 1 season. But she did talk about that in the book. But she did talk about Edward Herman and his death and how it all happened. He had brain cancer, but how she found out was his wife, I believe either his wife or ex-wife, I'm not too sure the situation there, but he was in the hospital, and I believe his wife at the time called her and said, I know how close of friends you are. You should come and see him. So she came in. She was at the hospital all day because they knew it was coming to the end. So she went, she was in the hospital all day. And then she goes, when she was going to leave, she knew that was going to be the last time she ever saw him before his passing. And she said he wasn't technically in a coma, she said, but he was out of it, like in and out. So She said goodbye. She kissed him. She said her goodbye. She said she gave him a kiss, and then she left. And after she left his room, realizing those are going to be the last words, she said goodbye. She said she loved him. She gave him a kiss, and she knew in that moment those would be the last words she said to him. And she said that at the time, because Gilmore Girls, there was no like reboot or revival, she said she knew that if there was ever going to be a revival or like a mini series like there was of Gilmore Girls, she knew there would never be. She knew there was never going to be a Richard and Emily again. Together again. And there wasn't. Gilmore Girls, she then goes into details of Gilmore Girls being revived as a miniseries that came out in 2016. And she said that Edward's absence was a big part of this. In the first episode, I can't remember because it's been a while since I've watched a miniseries, they addressed his passing in the show, and she wrote about that in the book, that they wanted to incorporate him in some way in the miniseries. And what they did was his character, to give him like a final farewell, what they did was they incorporated his passing on the show for his character. And she said in the show he had a heart attack and he was in the hospital and he never came out. That's how they wrapped up his character, because at the time he passed in 2014. The show came out in 2016, so I guess they started filming in the summer of 2015. So that's how they addressed his passing on the show. That he had a heart attack, he was in the hospital, he never came out, and he never woke up again. So that's how they addressed it. And she said this in the show, in the revival, and she also said that half of her character, Emily, is gone. She was Emily Gilmore for 50 years, because I guess that's how long her and Edward Herman's character were married on the show for. Were married like as a couple on the show. And she goes, half of her life is gone. For 7 years of being on Gilmore Girls, Edward Herman, she said, was her TV husband and her partner. Her partner's gone, as she said on the show. She goes, half of me is gone. I was the wife to, she said on the show, and she said it again in the book. She was the wife of Richard Gilmore for 50 years, but 7 years on screen. 50, I guess their character was, I guess as a couple on the show, their characters were married for 50 years. And she said in the book that, like I said, she mentioned on the show, she was the wife of Richard Gilmore for 50 years. And she said in the book, I was the wife of Richard Gilmore for 7 years. Those 7 years are gone. I will never get them back. But she did say his presence was there. He was mentioned a lot. And he was there even though he couldn't be. And she said everybody wants, because of how they ended the show, because they ended it like on a cliffhanger in a way, anytime a fan comes up to her, they always ask her, are they getting another season of this show? Even though it was supposed to be a mini series revival, that they weren't going to like renew it for another season or something, but everybody wants another season of the revival, and I guess make like another 4-episode miniseries season 2. she hopes that happens, but she doesn't know what Amy Sherman Palladino's plans are. But she said she hopes it happens. She wants it to happen. It would be fun to reunite all over again with everybody. She loves everybody. She's still very close with Lauren and Alexis. Lauren Graham actually she had a talk at a event space near where I live, and Lauren Graham actually moderated her talk. But I loved the book. 5 out of 5 stars. Like I said, this is a quick read. I was on a plane on vacation, and I was on a plane going to the place I was going to on vacation. I read the majority of this on the book. I read the majority, not on the book. I read the majority of this on the plane, excuse me. It's a quick read, very fast. You could, even if you're going to like the beach, or if you're going to be on a bus going maybe like to the Hamptons for a few hours, it's a quick read for that too. Or if you're going to be on the beach like in the Hamptons and you want to like read something, this is a good read for that. Even if you're by the pool too, this is good for that. I highly recommend it. It was 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I hope she writes another one because it was very good. It was very interesting. I really enjoyed it. I hope I know she hasn't yet, but since Lauren Graham has written 2 memoirs, she's written 1 memoir, and she wrote 2 like short story type of books. I hope Alexis writes a memoir because I would be interested to see her take and her side of things with Gilmore Girls and everything like that. So I hope she does. I'm happy we got another book written by another person from the TV show. I highly recommend this. That was my review of The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. Let me know down in the comments if you read it, if you've read Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham, which is her memoir, and what your thoughts are, as I would love to know. And I will see you soon in another video soon. Goodbye.